A geometric sequence is a sequence in which the ratio between any two consecutive terms is constant. Ratio is a key word. To find the ratio, you have to use division. You have to divide. And it has to be two consecutive terms. A common ratio is the numerical ratio between any two terms. We're going to use the variable r to represent common ratio. Now let's use these definitions. This is a sequence. Let's figure out what the ratio is. So these are two consecutive terms. They're right next to each other. 24 over 8 is the ratio. 24 over 8 is just 3. Here are two more consecutive terms. They're right next to each other. 72 divided by 24 is also 3. Here are two consecutive terms. Consecutive means they're right next to each other. 216 divided by 72 is 3. So they are all 3. We call this the common ratio. So our R value is 3. The common ratio is 3. Now that I know what the ratio is, I can find the next 3 terms of this sequence. So 216 times 3 is 648. If I multiply this by 3, I'll get 1,944. And if I multiply 1,944 by 3, I'll get 5,832. So those are the next 3 terms in my sequence. Let's do another example. These are two consecutive terms. Let's find the ratio. 81 over 16 divided by negative 243 over 32. This will give you negative 2/3. These are consecutive terms. Negative 27 over 8 divided by 81 over 16. You get negative 2/3. 9 over 4 divided by negative 27 over 8. You get negative 2/3. Because I got the same ratio every single time, this is a geometric series. So my R value is negative 2/3. Using my R value, I can now find the next 3 terms. So I'll do 9/4 and I'll multiply it by my common ratio, negative 2/3. This is negative 18 over 12, which can simplify to negative 3/2. So that means the next term in the sequence is negative 3/2. Let's find the next one. Negative 3/2 times the common ratio, negative 2/3. You get 6 over 6, which is just 1. So the next term is 1. The next value in the sequence is 1. Now we'll do 1 times the common ratio, negative 2/3, which is just negative 2/3. So the next term, or the next value in the sequence, is negative 2/3. The formula for a geometric sequence is AN equals A of 1 times R to the power of N minus 1. Where A1 is your first term. And of course, R stands for your common ratio. So we're going to use this formula to figure out what our sequence rule is. So here's an example. Let's figure out what the common ratio is. So these are the two consecutive terms. We'll do, and this is not supposed to have that 0 there. Okay, so we have 20,000 divided by negative 100,000. Okay, this will simplify to negative 1/5. Let's do the next two consecutive terms. This is negative 4,000 divided by 20,000. Those zeros cancel. This is negative 1/5. is what it simplifies to. Next, we have 800 divided by negative 4,000. That simplifies to negative 1/5. So our common ratio is negative 1/5. So let me use my formula. Your common ratio is negative 1/5. Okay, remember, A1 stands for the very first term. Well, this was the very first term in my sequence, so I'll plug that number in. I'll erase A1 and put 100,000, because that was my first term. Now, let's say I want to figure out what the 8th term in the sequence is. I have the first term, the second term, the third term, the fourth term. I want to figure out the 8th term in my sequence. So I'm going to substitute these in values with an 8. So this will be 100,000 times negative 1/5 to the power of 7, because 8 minus 1 is 7. And that will help us figure out what the 8th term is. So if you type, oh, this is a negative, sorry. That first term is a negative 100,000. So you will type this into your calculator and you will get 1.28. So your 8th value in the sequence will be 1.28. Let's try this problem. I'm always going to start off with the equation. I'm sorry, the formula. This is the formula we always use. Now, let me just point something out to you that's important. This number always matches this number. This number always matches this number, okay? So what I'm going to do this time, notice I was not given A1. I was given A4 and A7. So I'm going to use those values instead. I'll put A7 out here. The bigger term goes out here. And I'll put A4 right here. Now remember what we said. This value has to match this value. So I'm going to put a 7 here since I have a 7. This matches this. So that means this 4 will be right here. Okay, now I do not know the ratio. They did not give me that information. Now that I have my formula, let's go ahead and replace our values with what we know. So I know that A of 7 is negative 75 over 128. So A7, they told us that it was negative 75 over 128. They also told us what A4 is. A4 is 75 over 2. So I'm going to replace this with 75 over 2. Okay, so let's start simplifying. We're going to solve for our ratio. So let's do negative 75 over 128 equals 75 over 2, r to the power of 3, because 7 minus 4 is 3. So let's go ahead and start solving. I'm going to divide both sides by 75 over 2. Divide this side by 75 over 2. If you type this into your calculator, you will get negative 1 over 64 equals r cubed. Now, to get rid of a cubed, we're going to do the cubed root of both sides. This cubed root cancels out with the cube. So I'm left with just r. Now let's figure out this side. I know that negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. So the cubed root of negative 1 is negative 1. I know that 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. So that means the cubed root of 64 is 4. So that is my ratio. Now, let's go back to the problem. They want us to find A2. So let's go ahead and find A2. I'm going to use my formula again. AN equals A1 R to the power of n minus 1. Okay, my goal is to find A2. Well, let's use the information that we were given. I know what A4 is, so let's use A4. I'm going to use A4. They told me A4 is 75 over 2, so I'll put 75 over 2. And since this is A4, that means this in value has to be a 4. I know the ratio. We just figured out the ratio. Your ratio is -1 over 4. Okay, and I want to find A2. So instead of a 1, let's find out what A2 is. So this is going to be A2. And remember, this has to match. So this will be a 2. Okay, so now let's solve. I have 75 over 2 equals A2 times -1/4. 4 minus 2 is 2. Now, -1 squared is just 1. 4 squared is just 16. Okay, now I can multiply this side by 16 and it cancels out. I can multiply this side by 16. You can do that. Or some of you guys might feel better just dividing both sides by 16. You'll get the same answer. So divide by 1 over 16. That cancels. Divide by 1 over 16. So you will get, let me clean this up a little bit. Your final answer will be A2 equals, if you put this into your calculator, you'll get 600. Let's try another problem. I'm going to write the formula. I'm always going to start off with the formula. Something that you need to understand is that you don't always have to start with A1 to figure out things. They want us to find A10. We don't know what A1 is. We can do some algebra and figure it out, but you don't have to. Just know that this number needs to match this number, okay? This n needs to match this n. So let's try this problem. Okay. So my goal is to find out what A10 is. So my goal is to figure out what A10 is. Okay? Well, I don't know what A1 is. I don't know this value, but I do know this value. So let's plug that in. I do know what A2 is. And remember, my exponent here has to match what I have. So I have to have a 10 minus a 2. Okay, so that's how I'm going to set up my formula using what they gave me. Now let's start simplifying. Oh, they also told me that R is 4. So let me substitute that. I know my R value is 4. Okay, so let's simplify. A of 2 is -8. So A2 is -8. 10 minus 2 is 8. So just type this into your calculator. That means A10 is equal to -524,288. Okay, let's try a word problem. In 2009, Kimber purchased a new truck for $45,000. Each year, the value of the truck depreciates at the rate of 18%. So if it loses 18% of its value, that means it keeps 82% of its value. So this is how much it loses. Sorry, 10. It loses 18%, and it keeps 82%. That's what you have to think when you read that. Use a geometric sequence formula to find the value of, I guess her name changed, Eva's truck in 2017. Okay. So let's go ahead and do the geometric sequence. So 45,000, let's figure out how much she makes, or the value of this truck is the next year. So this is the very first year in 2009. That's how much the truck is worth. Let's see how much it's worth in 2010. So what I'm going to do is 45,000 times 0.82. If you put this into the calculator, you will get 36,900. So that is how much the truck is worth in 2010. It only retained 82% of its value. Okay? Let's see how much it's worth in the third year. Times 0.82. Oh, sorry, we just did that. Multiply it by 36,900. That's the new value. We're going to multiply it by 0.82. That's 30,258. So in 2011, the truck is now worth 30,258. Okay, so this is the value of the truck, and it's depreciating. So notice, guys, every time we multiplied by 0.82. We multiplied by 0.82. So that means your common ratio is 0.82. And this was your first term right here. So let's go ahead and use a geometric sequence formula. AN equals the initial value, so 45,000, that's your first term, times the common ratio, which is 0.82, n minus 1. Now, the question says, what's the value of the truck in 2017? So, a lot of you guys, when you read this problem, you think to yourself, okay, let's see, 8 years has passed. From 2009 to 2017, 8 years has passed. So you guys will put an 8 here and an 8 here. And if you do that, you'll get the problem wrong. The reason why is you have to count the very first year. So I listed the years for you at the bottom. This is the first term, right? This is the second term. This is the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth term is 2017, okay? So that's how you have to count the years. So we're not going to put an 8. We're going to put a 9. Yes, it is true that 2017 minus 2009 is 8. And you would think, oh, 8 years has passed, so I'm going to put an 8 in here. No, you have to count them as each term. So this is what you're going to put into your calculator. You can simplify this 9 minus 1 into an 8. So you're going to type this into your calculator. And your answer will be 9,198.63. That is the value of the truck after 8 years has passed. In 2017, this is the value of your truck.